I just knew that I believed in the band. I believed in the music that the band was making. I knew that they were fucking good because I'd seen them perform. I knew that they could do the job. That was a really important piece of radio because it didn't just touch the kids in East Berlin. It was through the whole of Eastern Europe, really. They just read it as Masterminded for success. It was only when we had the first press conference in the Reichstagspräsidentenpalais. I was putting up posters for the press conference that afternoon, and it just said, MFS, we are back. Wir sind zurück.
Welcome back to Unsigned Berlin. We're back to regular scheduling following our special episode with Kwangbin last week. In this episode, I'm talking to Mark Rieder, who is an accomplished and important part of the Berlin music scene. There's a whole radio show he did with ARD1 called Grenzgänger, which is Border Crosser. And it's all about the German music scene, especially in Berlin, surrounding the wall and the fall of the wall. He was a very important part of that. He also has a movie about him that he's currently touring with sort of around Europe and the world. It's called B-Movie, Lust and Sound in Berlin. It's only available online in Germany, I think. So if you're out of Germany, you're unfortunately out of luck, but I'm sure it's around. He was the German representative for Factory Records, representing Joy Division and then later New Order. He toured then with New Order in 1985, I believe, maybe 84, with his electronic duo Shark Vegas, who was opening for them. He organized special episodes of The Tube, which is a BBC show, and basically the idea was to have East Berlin and West Berlin bands perform together. So many more things. He organized several secret concerts in the DDR, that's what they call it in German, I think GDR, the government of East Berlin, the Russian communist part of Berlin. He founded then in 1990 MFS, which is his music label, and we were talking about that in the episode. MFS stood for, when the Soviet Union hadn't collapsed yet, the Ministerium for Staatssicherheit, so it was the Stasi, it was the secret police, and then he named his label MFS following that. And it stands for now Masterminded for Success. So we'll talk about why he did that and how it got some attention and how he got it through the more bureaucratic state of trying to avoid getting anyone angry, but still calling it that. The label took a bit of a hiatus for 10 years, and he's returned now producing and helping out with a band called Stolen, which is a Chinese punk band with some electronic influence. There's just a wealth of knowledge and experience and interesting stories inside of Mark, and it was really fascinating to talk to him and be able to get all of that out of him. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you very much for listening, and to help us out, help support the podcast, it's very, very useful if you can leave a review on your podcast platform of choice or share the episode around to anyone who might find this interesting. Thank you again, and enjoy the episode.
Yeah, like I said, Frank Zappa Strasse. That was quite attractive.
Come check it out. And it's, just
in the deepest east of Berlin.
Where did you live when you first moved to Berlin?
Well, the very, very first moment when I arrived in Berlin, I lived in the Winterfeldstrasse 24 in Schöneberg.
In Schöneberg.
Nollendorfplatz.
And now you're still mostly in Berlin?
No,
right?
I live in Kreuzberg.
Oh, okay. Nice.
In 1980, I moved to Kreuzberg. So, and then that's it.
Stayed there. That's home.
Moved.
Not long after moving to Berlin, you worked with Factory Records.
It sounds like it's this fantastic sort of thing now, actually.
Well,
I mean,
in retrospect,
the way people look at it and read it like that, they think it's they almost have this vision of like maybe Factory Records as a record label, like say Universal or something, or some established label or whatever.
Well, it did become an important player in terms of being connected with New Order and Joy Division.
It's a totally important thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing for Manchester was that it was important, but it wasn't run in the same kind of way as a record label would be run today. Yeah. That's for sure.
And your official title from somewhere is German representative.
Yeah, I was the representative.
What was
because the plan was to start Factory Records Germany. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Once Tony Wilson realised that I'm living here, I'm not just here for a week or something. Yeah. It was like, oh, maybe you can do Factory Germany, and I was like, yeah, maybe I can, but you're going to have to fund it
Right.
If it's because the money's going to go into your pocket. So I kind of just like expected Tony Wilson to fork out for Factory Germany, but he wasn't prepared to do that, of course.
Oh, okay.
He expected me to do it all out of my own pocket, and then he would collect all the accolades that would come along with it, the expansion. And he said, and later on in the 90s, he confessed to me, he said, "It looked really good on paper." Factory Records, Manchester, Brussels, New York, Berlin. He said, "It looked really good."
What was your actual role of like day to day? What were you trying to do when you were doing that?
Just get gigs for Joy Division.
Right.
Initially, I mean, before I became Factory Records German representative, I was also Joy Division's man in Berlin.
Right.
I was the mate, and I suddenly arrived here, and I suddenly started to explore this fledgling new scene that was happening here. And for them, it was like, well, that's really interesting. They were intrigued. Already the fact that I'd come to Berlin was quite intriguing, but the fact that maybe there was a possibility. Because there was something new happening here. It wasn't just, when I arrived here in the 78, it was like, guys just looked like Jesus in jeans and army jackets, right? And it was like, that's it, It was like they were still into listening to Supertramp,
right,
and Dire Straits and things like this. It was like, have you ever heard of punk rock? What's that? They had some kind of concept, vision of what they thought punk rock represented.
Yeah. And
they had no idea, no concept about what Manchester music actually was like in any way, really. And just being here, I just thought I'd just help my friends in Manchester. Maybe we can get a gig here.
Yeah, makes sense. And how was it trying to get a gig? Was it actually pretty difficult to introduce this thing that sounded different?
Impossible. It was absolutely impossible. It's like no one cared. No one gave a shit about Joy Division.
Was the setup similar to it is now, where you have to pay a venue to book it? Okay. What was the...
No.
How did it work?
I just knew that I believed in the band. I believed in the music that the band was making. I knew that they were fucking good because I'd seen them perform. I knew that they could do the job. I knew that it was, it was just a matter of time. Right. And I just had to be very patient as to what would happen next, really. And knowing that, okay, they're in the studio making a new record, I'm hoping that the next record will be better than the last record. And the next record after that will be better after that. So it was just a progression thing. And the minute they started to get positive media reactions in the British music press,
right,
then I knew that would be the stepping stone, if you like, to showing people, look, they've got a good review in the paper in the New Musical Express, and the people who were involved in our kind of little new wave scene at that period, they were nearly all kind of like Anglophiles. They constantly looked over the British music papers because we had a weekly music press. We didn't have a monthly music press like in Germany. In Germany, all these magazines, they would come out once a month.
Yeah.
And in England, it'd be, or in Great Britain at least, it'd be every week. So weekly, you were updated.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's a very different speed, right? So they would regularly go over the newspapers, even though they were a week old. They'd go over the newspapers to try and find out what's happening new, what's being spoken about. And I took my opportunity and said, look, Unknown Pleasure's got a really good review in the New Musical Express. If it wasn't good, it wouldn't be in the paper. They might have slagged it off and said this is the shittiest record ever. Yeah, could have done that too. But the fact that they got mentioned in the paper, whether they got slagged off or not, was the most important factor. Like I could just show, look, they've got attention. Yeah. And there's this guy who ran the Kant Kino. He was called Connie Konchak. It was also a bit of an Anglophile, I think. And he had a lot of bands on there. And initially he wasn't particularly interested in Joy Division because he'd never heard of them. He'd never read about them in the New Musical Express or Sounds or whatever. And then when they did, I was able to show him. And then he'd said, I've heard this. I've heard about this band. I've heard this. This is the record. Yeah. And it changed everything then.
Why do you think the music press was weekly in the UK but monthly here? Was it that there was more like happening in the scene in the UK than in Germany, or was it an infrastructure problem? Or
well, at that period, there definitely was something more happening in the UK musically than there was in Germany. It's like in the UK, we'd invented pop music with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and things like that. So there's a big drive towards kind of like doing something creative like that.
Yeah.
And music was really, really important to us in our infrastructure as a nation, really. And we were proud of that. We could export that. We saw that as a not just as a entertainment thing, but also as an export product.
Right.
You know, and they didn't think of it as a product, but it was the thing we could export. British culture around the world, Britishism around the world. You know, if our empire was no longer in existence, you know, our military might was no longer in existence, then we could at least do it musically,
right?
And show our Britishness through the music, and our, you know, inventiveness and creativity for music. And it was a very good image that we had, you know. And in the 60s it was like swinging 60s London, you know. It was Jimi Hendrix and kind of flower power kind of stuff. It was really, really important, and we sold that. And even then when punk rock came, we sold that. A new thing, you know. America's eyes were always kind of constantly hovering over what we were doing, because they also benefited from it as well. But it was a really important thing, this like musical world which we lived in, and I'd grown up in. And coming to Germany, you know, Germany had not really got that, you know. They'd had the Schlager or whatever within Germany, but you didn't really have so much recognition as a German artist singing in German, you know. It was like Germany was still the enemy in the eyes of the British, really, you know. And then you have things like Kraftwerk, or more even abstracter things like Tangerine Dream, or, you know, the early Tangerine Dream albums were very experimental, electronic experimental albums, and you know, all these kind of early electronic pioneers that we know today as everyday names. You know, back then they were like, you know, who the hell are they? You know, Virgin Records. They kind of sensed there was something interesting happening in Germany, and they signed Faust to Virgin. But nobody was interested, of course. So they made a deal with the NME, whereby if somebody cut out the coupon in the NME and took it to the record shop, to Virgin Record shop, they could buy a Faust album for 49 pence. Right? So get people interested in listening to this abstract kind of like non-conventional music. Germany had that, you know. It was known, and then when Kraftwerk came along with after Autobahn, after Radioaktivität, and they came along with Trans Europa Express, it was really kind of like a guideline in a sense. It was like it could go this way, you know.
Yeah, it's so interesting because Germany's had like a real flow back and forth of being a very important place in experimentation in the arts.
From decades, like
jahrhunderts, has like,
you know,
waves of then not being interested at
Otto
all.
Dix, you know, people like this, you know.
You've been, a large part of your whole life has been introducing music to people, new sounds and everything like that. And there's some information, especially on the radio show that you did, about you bringing music over to the East from the West. When you were doing that, was it like mostly requests that people had of like, oh, can you bring this? I really want to have it. Or were you trying to bring new things into the East so they could hear new sounds?
A bit of both, I think. A bit of both, really. You know, my friends would ask me, what does this band sound like? They might have just heard one track or something. You know, they avidly listened to John Peel's BBC radio show on the British Forces Network. That was a really important piece of radio, because it didn't just touch the kids in East Berlin. It was through the whole of Eastern Europe, really. You know, you could tune in on your medium wave radio and kind of get this radio show, which was unlike anybody else's radio show, because John Peel really pioneered really young and new bands and new records. If he thought it was interesting, he put it on, you know, and that kind of opened the doors for many careers for many bands, you know. And it was like the kids in the East, my friends, they listened to this radio show religiously. It was nothing like East German radio. It was nothing like West German radio. It was like nothing. It was absolutely unique. John Peel's radio show. His voice was the voice of freedom, really. The tone of his voice, it kind of represented some kind of freedom to choose what kind of music you played on your radio show. It wasn't formatted. He didn't get a playlist of things he had to play that week on the radio show like it is today, you know. You have to play these songs. He played just whatever he wanted, whatever he liked, from whatever genre of music that he thought was good. And his music was musical taste was so diverse and so eclectic that he could listen to a reggae band, and the next track would be a punk rock track, and then the next track would be some kind of progressive rock thing. It was all over the place, but it was just always interesting. And the kids in the East, they recorded his shows every week, you know, and maybe they just caught the end of one track, or they didn't really know what it sounded like, because they didn't understand what the name of the band was, you know. I'm still trying to work out what my friend asked me was something like Blue Lift in a Building. He said, "What's that band?" I said, "I have no idea. What could it be? Blue Lift in a Building." No idea. We still don't know today.
Maybe someone will one day
He
listen to
didn't,
the end of a song and be like, "Oh."
His English wasn't so good, so he'd heard that and thought that's what John Peel had said. It was the name of the band.
Yeah,
But it could have been anything.
There's a famous one of, in Latin America, a lot of the there's like a joke of the "This is the Rhythm of the Night," which is a massive like club hit, which is sounds in Spanish like they're saying, "Are these Reeboks or are they Nikes?"
Oh, really?
Esos son Reeboks, esos son Nikes. And people are like, "Oh, yeah, I know the Reebok song. Okay, yeah, I know what it is."
Yeah.
It's like this weird translation problem.
Yeah.
Zooming forward to 1990, the Soviet Union had fallen or was falling, and you started MFS, which was the abbreviation for the Stasi in German. What was your idea behind starting the label? What did you really want to do with it?
Well, the idea just came to me when I was making this Division album in East Berlin, which was Division were an independent sort of band, new wavy kind of band, and I was producing their album as East Germany's kind of falling apart, communism's unraveling itself, you know, every day, and when the wall came down, it was like no longer this state-owned record label called the Amiga no longer existed. Literally, I stopped making. We recorded the Division album throughout the whole of the latter half of like 1989. Like, September, October, November, and we finished recording the last song on the 2nd of November, and I thought I'm going to go away for a few weeks, 2 weeks, with some friends, some English friends who were coming over, and we'll go on a trip through Eastern Europe, and then when I come back, I'll finish producing this album. Now, producing this album was invited by Amiga, which was the state-owned record label of East Germany. They had me produce this record. They wanted me to produce this record. At the time, I had no idea that I was the only British person ever to make a record in East Germany. I had no idea that no one from the West had ever done it before. So, but I thought people came over all the time to do this, you know. I'm making this record, and then I find out that this is the case, that no one has ever been before, and I was kind of curious as to why they were so insistent why I came over and made this record. Because they didn't ask me once, they asked me a couple of times, you know, to make sure that I was going to do it, you know. And we're making this record. The whole of East Germany at the time, it starts to unravel itself, you know, since the May of 1989, when the border was open between Hungary and Austria. Suddenly all these East Germans are going on holiday to Hungary, and the place is rupturing East Germans, you know, trying to make this record. I'm not thinking anything really like, you know, tomorrow the wall could come down. That never kind of entered into it. I knew that politically East Germany were going to have to do something about it. They're going to have to change and change their policies or something. But I never thought for a moment that the wall would come down. You know, so I went on my holiday with my friends. We left on the night of the 8th to the 9th of November 1989. We left to go to Poland, and we drove all the way through Poland and spent a few days there, went to Czechoslovakia, spent a few days there, get to Hungary, and I found out the Berlin Wall came down on the 9th of November, and I'd completely missed it. And then, but I still had to produce this record, so at the end it wasn't like over, you know, I came back, it wasn't like East Germany ceased to exist. East Germany was still in existence. It was like, everything was almost the same, but the East German Amiga, like crew there, if you like, the people who worked there, they got rid of the boss of the Amiga and renamed the Amiga Zong. Literally almost overnight, you know, it was suddenly stopped being a state-owned record. Like this guy's out. It's going to be called Zong now. And I came back and it was a complete. Okay, so I have to finish this record. And as I'm producing this album, for release and to the end, I was thinking, they've got this fantastic infrastructure here. Now, they've got all these pressing machines in Babelsberg. They had 6 2-Lex Alpha machines in Babelsberg. They were like totally, like the whole infrastructure of East Germany, the record shops, they knew every single record shop, they knew every person who would buy the records and stuff, all the radio stations and everything. They had all this infrastructure there. It was all in place. I come back and it's gone. It's like we've disbanded our distribution arm,
right.
And I'm thinking, like, why did you do that? It's the most important part of your structure, yeah. And I was thinking, they're now open for an open market, but they have absolutely no idea how it's done.
Right. As in Zong or the
everything.
The
I mean, I told them they should call the record label Zony, right? Because in the West, the Soviet zone. Was the people who lived in the Soviet zone were known as Zonies, and I said, well, we should call it Zony and just change the S for a Z, and then we can get sued, and they were like, that's impossible, we can't do that. I was like, yeah, but you think of the advertising. Yeah. They had no concept of advertising, so they had no idea that they could utilize such an issue, Anyway, I was just thinking, now that you're free, now you can choose whatever you want to do. You don't have to, your musical releases are not dictated by the state anymore. You've not got a group of old blokes deciding which bands are allowed to be performers in the state or not, or what records are allowed to be released, or that's no longer an issue. So you can just you can do it yourself. You can think of something new. So right now there's this brand new style of music which is just happening in the West. In West Berlin, it's called techno, and it's really, I didn't tell them there's only one club, where 80 people go. I told him it's this fantastic new sound of music which it was happening. I was thinking, this is great, we could do something here. And they went, well, if you know so much about it, why don't you do it? And I thought, okay, what an offer. Yeah, of course. I don't know anything about running a record label. I've never run a record label in my life before. I only had my experience through Tony Wilson, really, and Rob Gretton, manager of Joy Division and New Order. I only had that knowledge, really, and so, and Daniel Miller from Mute Records. I thought the way he ran his record label was very honourable, and I thought if I can mix both, then I can do an MFS. And I thought I needed to have a name for this label that would resonate throughout the whole of East Germany, but also would drive fear into their parents. The parents of the kids who were going to be listening to this music, and also maybe like swap one terrorist organisation for another, really, and I thought about how can I retain the 3 letters. I can't just call it MFS because they'll never allow me to release a record label in East Germany called MFS. It would never happen. I thought I need to give it some meaning of some sort, and I thought, as the East Germans don't really speak English, they don't really know what things mean, but they certainly won't do what they always do if it was in German, and that is abbreviated. So if it was called, Ministerium for Staatssicherheit, which was the name of the Stasi in long form, it became MFS. But I wanted to keep MFS, and so I had to create an idea behind that which would give it some kind of meaning. And I sat in at my bar with Dave Rimmer, and we just sat there and wrote loads of things out, like Martians from space and things like this. And in the end, it became Masterminded for Success. We like Dave said, it has to be something which is like indicator for what it's going to be. And then we just came up with the idea Masterminded for Success.
Also, something that's not. That would be abbreviated to MFS colloquially, like Martians. Martians in space, for example, would be abbreviated to Martians, probably. I would imagine.
Well, it could have been. Yeah, people just called it Masterminded, but you know what I mean? It was having 3 letters just made it easier to remember.
And did I understand right that was then part of what was Amiga and became Zone?
Well, they funded everything at the beginning.
What did they say about it being called MFS?
Well, at the beginning, they didn't know, did they? They thought it was just called Masterminded for Success, and they just read it as Masterminded for Success. And then it was only when we had the first press conference in the Reichstag's Präsidentenpalais, which is directly behind the Reichstag, which is where I had my office, and that's where the head office was of the Amiga. I was putting up posters for the press conference that afternoon, and it just said, MFS, we are back. Wir sind zurück. And one guy was having his lunch, he just came past and saw me putting the poster up, and he goes, what's that? And I said, this is my label. And he was horrified. And he scuttled off and told everybody in this company that, I've checked, my record label is really called MFS, because then the penny dropped, you know what I mean? It was like, oh dear. But it's too late.
Yeah, and the marketing probably worked, I'd imagine.
Yeah, well, the press conference was quite full, actually. We held it in Hermann Göring's office, which was Abhörraum 101, yeah. Listening Room 101, which I found hilarious, but none of these Germans knew what it actually had, connotations it had to George Orwell's 1984, and that's where they listened to all the demo tapes of all the bands that they were going to sign to the Amiga. And when I started my MFS label, I didn't have an office initially, so they put me in that room. That was my office for a while. Yeah, and you have this kind of massive press conference. The people from the Amiga were hoping we'd get very positive and very nice press coverage, whatever. But everybody from the East, all the people from the East, when they realised it was MFS, they were all horrified, and we got slagged off. But we got loads of slagging off, which was in a sense, the whole intention was to make it, to divide it and kind of like, say, oh, what are they doing and everything. Because I thought that will automatically attract people towards it, because they want to know what is it all about, why they're being slagged off, and then they'd find out, hey, it's actually quite good, this, what they're talking about. So it, and it did exactly that.
And then MFS took a bit of a break for a while, basically for around 10 years, and then you're back with Stolen, who's a Chinese band, which is very cool.
Yes, thank you.
What was your idea with coming back, and why did you come back with a Chinese band, which is probably not as accessible as a German band, for example?
Well, the whole thing was, after doing MFS for so long, and I just kind of got bored, really. I got bored with the fact that people were so unwilling to accept different directions within a certain framework of music, really. I thought that, their idea, it's like, they just boxed me in, and I'm not talking about the audience, really. I'm talking about the people who are kind of responsible for, sending out music to every people, like distributors and people like this. Yeah. They were like, yeah, but MFS is a trance label. I was like, where does it say that on my moniker? It doesn't say anywhere. I've never ever said I was, really. Other people have said that MFS is a trance label. I've been given this moniker as such, just because of what I'd started at the beginning, and because of an idea that I had, that I wanted it to be kind of hypnotic and trance-like inducing. It became this, and it became stamped that. But for me, that was such a limitation. It was like for me, if it doesn't have to be one particular thing to be trancey. It can be ambient and still be trancey, and I was kind of like frustrated by that. And when Paul van Dyk, I had a Hungarian DJ on the label called Paul van Dyk, when he decided he couldn't take it anymore because it was like so frustrating when we were trying to do something different, try to present something different. We the slagging off got to him too much, I think, and he couldn't take that, so he decided he was going to stop. And I just thought, okay, I'll just wait, see what, if there's anything anything kind of like inspires me or will enlighten me in some way. I'll stop until I find somebody who does that. So if it doesn't have to be just one person, it could be a DJ, it could be a band, it could be anybody. But I just thought, like, I'm not inspired by any of the music which is happening right now. It always seems to be like just a rehash of what we heard before. So no one's daring to step outside of the box, and it's really getting just one thing. It's becoming one thing, and I really didn't find it so exciting. I mean, I've listened to the music. It's not that I don't listen to that kind of music, techno music, but I just found it just like it was not going anywhere.
Yeah.
The fact that there were new instruments or new plugins or whatever being available didn't really make it any better, especially as things started to become all kind of more and more like retro orientated. So I was like, we're not looking forward, we're looking back.
Yeah, neue Deutsche Welle.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, okay, maybe it's something which we have to do in the 21st century.
Yeah.
To look back to see what did we have, because when we were living through the 80s, we never gave it 1 minute's thought of what the future might think about it, what we're doing.
Yeah.
It was always a question of, well, tomorrow it could all be over. Tomorrow we could all be annihilated. Know, so let's do it, have fun and do it now, because this is the only opportunity we're going to have. If that's the case, and if not, then it goes on.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, it was a little bit like that. I just got a bit kind of bored. Really with that, and I'm not going to release something until I get an enlightenment from something that I can feel I'm doing something with it, and it only happened to be that I went on tour with B Movie, a documentary film about my life in West Berlin. I went on a 2-month tour of China, and I played at an open air event in Chengdu, and it was organised by a friend of mine called Nibing, and he had worked with him years previously, and he booked this tour, and we played in Chengdu, and it was like in a forest,
cool.
A 3-day event or 2-day event it was, and you had all kinds of different kinds of music. The full range of what young Chinese kids were listening to. It went from being rock and roll to being avant-garde rock to being disco and all different things. But I noticed that everybody was there really for only one thing, and they were only there for the band that was going to be on before me, and that's this group called Stolen. And I was like, I went to their practice in the afternoon, in their practice room. And I was like, oh, it's really, they're really doing their own kind of thing, Like they've been, they haven't been subjected to decades and decades of pop music like I have, right? Unlike like people in the West have, and they've got it all in just kind of one lump sum sort of thing. They didn't really know what Western music was really, when they were young kids. The only thing that you could buy as a download was John Bon Jovi or something, or Whitney Houston. That was considered Western music. Jennifer Lopez, that was Western music from America. It was all American. There was no English music, and they had near to their practice room there was a small French bistro opened up by this French guy, and he played in his French bistro the music that he liked, which was all like things like Kraftwerk, Western music, techno, and modern things that they never knew existed, and they just go there just to listen to the music and just say, what's this, and they became interested in all these different things. Of course, in the meantime, things are a bit more accessible in China at that point. Even though they don't have like Google or our kind of network that we have, where you can listen to all kinds of music on Spotify or whatever. They didn't have anything like that. They had their own version of that, but they also had their French guy in the bistro who had hours and hours of this stuff, of music that they'd never heard before. And in the meantime, like the Western music is available in China, of course, now. Since these big platforms have done deals with the Chinese government and things like that, to be able to present Western music, so there's a wider palette of things that people can listen to. But Stolen, I thought, they really kind of made their own version of whatever. They'd taken all these elements that they'd been influenced by and made their own version of that.
Yeah.
And I like that kind of approach. I was thinking, China doesn't really have a musical face. If I say Japan, you kind of have an idea about Japanese music and what it sounds like, whether it be Sakamoto or whether it be, Kenichi or whatever. You've got Taki Ishino makes a very quirky kind of pop music, has Denki groove, but as a techno DJ makes really credible techno music. But you had an idea about what kind of thing Japan represented, right? You could say South America, Argentina, whatever. You've got an idea of what it sounds like. Let's say China, you haven't the faintest idea what does modern China sound like?
Yeah.
Right? And so I was thinking, how can we give this young China, this new China that was coming up, this opportunity to show and present themselves onto the world musical stage? And I thought maybe this is the moment, really. And I went with Stolen into their little studio, which is about the same size as your studio, and we just made like 3 songs for a demo, right? Just so that it could see, work together with me and just see how it sounds, right? And we made this demo, and I didn't think anything of it. I came back to Berlin, and then they told me they'd released it. Well, that wasn't the plan, actually, but they'd released it. And now in China, it's a different thing about releasing a track. It's like, it's not like here, and in the West, and for everything in China is rated. So you get you have this facial recognition software which monitors your every move throughout the whole society, and everything's rated. If you cross the lights on red and you think there's no cars coming, the CCTV camera will take your face and it will clock up. You get points, minus, whatever, and on everything has a value. Everything's estimated between 0 and 10. Where does it lie between? There's a film good? Is it 9 or apparently nothing gets 10.
Right.
But we got 9.3 on the Richter scale of China's new wave for these 3 demo tracks, and Stolen decided they want to come to Berlin to make an album. So they came to Berlin and we made this album called Fragment, and that was interesting for them because they got to see what Berlin was like on an everyday situation, and we just made this album. And as I'm making this album, I'm thinking, what are you going to do with this record?
Yeah.
When after we finished it, we'll release it in China. And but what about the rest of the world? You're singing it in English because you want to reach a wider audience. So where are you going to release it? And they were like, we don't know. And I said, well, maybe because I'm quite interested in what you're doing. I was quite interested in their idea and their vision or whatever. I thought, and I'd seen them perform live, and I knew that it was quite incredibly good live. I thought, okay, well, I'll restart MFS and let's take it from there.
Cool.
Yeah.
What is the production side like? Because you're producing, as I understand it, you're producing for the band.
Yeah.
What do you? Is it mostly like they have everything arranged and prepared, and then you're going in? What are you doing?
Songs wise, they had a rough outline of what the songs were. I think a couple of all the songs on the album, like 3 or 4, they'd already had a bit of a better idea of how they were going to be. They played them live and stuff, and we needed to work on the lyrics so that the lyrics would be singable, because Langyi's not native English speaker, and there's not so much kind of there's not many English lessons in China at this point, right? So his English is kind of limited. But I thought, if he's committed and he will do his best to sing as well as he can in English, and I'd give him guidance, and together we wrote lyrics together, and then we just got the band to play whatever. I mean, the drums we had as a file.
Right.
The drummer, because we said play all the songs in China with your drum kit, because we don't have drum kit in our studio. So I said to him, just do that in the studio, or either go to a studio or just record it as you wish. So I have an idea how the drums sound like. And so we had a backing track of a drum backing track, right, basically, and everybody played then on top of that.
Nice, cool. For from doing my research, can see where you're very marketing you have a good mind for marketing with obviously MFS and with the Zoni thing as well. But marketing within China, I understand, can be a little bit complicated because it's controlled by the government. How do you
say that? Yeah.
how's your experience been like with that?
Luckily, I didn't have to deal with that side of things because I was doing the Western release.
Do you kind of get free reign on what the Western release can do because it's still associated with China?
Well, you know, one has to be a bit more careful, if you like, as to what, you know, you say and do.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that was also, you know, part of it. Really, I mean, at that point, when I started it with Stolen, started working with Stolen, that was China was looking at like it was going in a very different direction as to now.
Right.
The government changed, the head of state changed, the agenda changed, and the political narrative changed completely. So,
in what kind of way?
It became more authoritarian.
Right.
You know, when I started working with Stolen, you know, they were all looking forward to the future. The way, you know, you could be an entrepreneur, you could design your own clothes, you could, you know, create your own music and style. You weren't dictated to by the state what you were allowed and not allowed to do, apart from the lyrics, which the lyrics by, you know, we had to submit the lyrics to the state authorities, so they would go through, the state censor would go through the lyrics to make sure that we weren't going to sing anything that was about the 3 T's, you know. It daren't be Tibet, Tiananmen Square or Taiwan, you know. So it was very complicated. Yeah, we thought, okay, see how long it takes them to go through the lyrics. Took them about 3 weeks. When we came to do the second album, which happened during COVID, that was a very different situation altogether. Things had radically and rapidly changed in China for a start off on a political scale, and having to make this album remotely was very complicated as well, because, you know, they're sitting in China. And we tried our best to make this second album as best we could. We submitted the lyrics to the state authorities, and it took 6 months for them to clear it this time. Because in the meantime, because Stolen had released a record in the West, and they toured with New Order in it's like October 2019. I got them the tour with New Order.
Did you join for the trip?
Of course, yes. Naturally, yeah. You know, I wanted to be there and see it all, you know. And that was only because I'd been to Danzig with Bernard Sumner, and he asked me, what are you doing? I said, I'm just producing a band from China. I've just finished making this album with a band from China. And he was like, what does that sound like? And then we played it in the car, and he heard it, and he was like, wow, they're really good. And then he asked me if they were going to be doing a New Order, were going to be doing a European tour, and he just asked me, you know, would they like to play a gig in Berlin? I'm like, if they're going to come all the way from China, you know, it would be a bit of a shame just to do one gig. What about the rest of the tour? And so it became the rest of the tour too. So they invited them for the entire tour as a support act, and that gave them also pretty much a captive audience. You know, people who were coming to see New Order had to see Stolen, but a lot of people were thinking and asking the question, you know, why are New Order why don't they have a Manchester band as their support act? And the idea was, well, yeah, of course they could have had a Manchester band as support act. You know, they had a band which was from a guy from Manchester, really, you know, like I'm partly involved in that, you know. But I thought, you know, Bernard wanted to show a new face of a young China. You know, this is possible, right? Things have changed in the meantime, of course. You know, things aren't so simple.
How have you seen touring change for the New Order tour that was more recent, and the one that you were on with Shark Vegas, which, by the way, is a hilarious, amazing name for a band?
Well, size of the gigs for a start off, but actually not really that much, to be honest. I mean, you know, New Order to me are not just a band, so they treat it differently. But you know, it was. I mean, of course, when you're playing yourself on stage, it's different than having a band on stage. You know,
Yeah.
It's a little bit different,
but nothing dramatically.
Nothing dramatic. Not so different. I mean, you know. I mean, the thing is, like the whole thing with Stolen is like they're very disciplined, and they were. You know, I said to the band, "You've got 15 minutes to get all your gear off stage," which they didn't. They had half an hour, but I didn't tell them that they had half an hour. I said, "You've got 15 minutes to get your gear off stage," and they were so efficient that they got the gear off in 10 minutes.
Well,
and then every single day it got faster and faster. Yeah. So at the end of the tour, I think they got by the last gig, they got the stuff off stage within 3 minutes.
Crazy.
Which for the sound guys and the tech crew of New Order, they loved Stolen.
It's probably faster than you got it off stage when you were doing Shock Vegas.
Undoubtedly. Like, they said that no band had ever done that ever in the
Crazy.
entire time that they'd worked with New Order, and they've worked with New Order since the very beginning. You know, some of them, they couldn't believe that Stolen kept getting standing ovations and encores and things, and they said that no support act ever gets that.
Cool.
So they were quite impressed. They became fans as well. You know, the tour crew as well, and it was very nice to see that. You know, we could create this new kind of scenosomatic kind of sound of music, which would like bring us all together a little bit. You know, the East and West and stuff. I thought it would be very interesting, but then you know, politically things happen and you don't have any control over them, and so things look a lot different these days.
For your production, you do a lot of dance music, a lot of dance remixes of New Order stuff and Joy Division stuff. Also, there's some Pet Shop Boys in there, and lots. It's an incredible list of going through. Like, you did so many things. What is your production process like? Have you moved to a digital space, or are you still analog?
It's a bit of both, really.
And you starting the songs with like, okay, I'm trying to do a dance remix of this. I'm just gonna come up with something random and then see how I can work it in, or like, what's your creative process for it?
Usually when I hear the track, I can hear how I'd make it. If I was going to do a remix of it, I can hear it out in my mind.
It's not really like I'm going to try to do a remix of this. Let's see how we can do it.
No, I mean, if somebody specifically asks me for a remix that's like a dance track or something, which actually nobody does, then. You know, it's up to me. You know, I think, okay, I'm going to make a track. If the track's a certain style, it could do with something that people can play in a club, kind of, or at an event of some kind, you know, which is a bit more clubby sound or a bit more driving or whatever. And then on the other hand, it could be something exactly the opposite. It's already a club track, and I want to make it into something which is exactly the opposite to that. You know, something which you could just kind of chill out and listen to, you know.
And then you kind of trying to get stems, or are you? And then
I you know, I always have the always have the parts, and I always put as many parts from the original as I possibly can into the song. You know, I think that's. I'm not a fan of the remix where it's just like a partial segment of a vocal sample whacked over some generic techno track. That's not remixing for me. Remixes for me is taking all the original stems, all the original sounds, all the original parts that have been given, and making them work in my version, you know, of the song. And at the same time, I add my parts as well. Then, you know, I'll add guitars or bass or synthesizers or sequencers or whatever, drums, however I need it to make it what it is. Give it my signature, but at the same time it should be automatically and instantly recognizable as the original song. That's the way I see a remix. You know, it's like you hear it, you know what it is. You know, you might not initially know what it is, but the minute you hear it, it makes click in your mind. You know that it's that because you hear all the elements from the original song. You know, I don't like to just purge it of all its originality, and you know. But as music becomes kind of like a lot of music becomes a little bit more. Preset soundy sort of thing. It makes it very difficult to choose something which is, you know, new or individual if it's not in there, you know. And then I have to add it then. Yeah.
So the question in summary was, what's the clubbing scene like in China?
what's the clubbing scene like in China? Well, when I first went to China in the beginning of the 2000s, like 99, 2000, the first club I went to was it was like a discotheque, and in front of the DJ, where the DJ was playing, there was like a metal barrier, and at either side of the metal barrier were policemen, and a line of girls with like long black hair, kind of shaking their heads, head banging. And in the club, everybody looked like they'd just taken a fashion mag of like fashions of the 20th century, and looked at the pictures and said, I want to look like that, without knowing what it actually meant in any way, but just the image. So you had, in this club, you had like guys in leather jackets with quiffs, like rebels without causes, and girls in petticoats. You had punks, you had guys in suits, you had everything you can imagine, really. Techno kids with cyber glitch, glowing hair, and all together in this one place. A couple of years later, it had completely changed.
Right.
Gone were the posters outside of the heroic, communist revolutionaries defending communist China. They've been replaced with Volkswagen and Hyundai car advertisements, and the club had become just like anywhere else. Everyone was wearing jeans and t-shirt and trainers, and I was like, oh, so gone of this drive to look differently.
Yeah.
To absorb some fashion of the 20th century, that had suddenly gone.
So just a naive, like, I like this because I like it, not because of the cultural context that's attached to it, which is really cool.
I think probably more or less, I think the thing that changed everything was the fact that, like, when you go out dressed up like that in a leather jacket and quiffy hair, it's hard to dance to techno.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? It's really hard to get dolled up and dance to techno when you look like that, right? You don't want to go down that road, really. And I think that's why it's changed very rapidly. Once they realised all these Westerners that are coming, they're only wearing jeans and t-shirts and trainers, right? So it very, and seeing that everything's made there in the first place, it came very quickly. That it transformed itself very quickly. But the club scene there is pretty huge. I went, I did a month's tour with Paul van Dyk in China in 2003, I think it was, and we played all over China, and he had a residency in one club in Shanghai, and this club had 2,000 people every night, and he played there every day, and apart from Fridays and Saturdays when we did other gigs in other places. Wow. But every night there were 2,000 people in this club. That's and incredible. Downstairs they had like a rap club in the club, and we did wet and hard parties in Shanghai, and that was a very, very interesting experience indeed, because we had this kind of like visual which was very pornographic, but it was made in such a way that you couldn't really tell, and that was showing every night in this club. And the guy who ran the club was a former cop. He was a former detective. But he realised he was always going around to the clubs looking for drug dealers and things, but he got really absorbed into the club scene and things, and he was like, I want to do a club. I don't want to be a cop. Cool. I want to have a club. So he had this massive club in Shanghai. And we went to some places where, it was just bizarre. You think, like, why here? In the meantime, you go to a place like Guangzhou, Shenzhen, whatever, there's all massive clubs. In Chengdu there was a former bank which was a huge high rise, and on every single floor was a club.
That's so cool.
And it went from being karaoke at the bottom on the ground floor through every kind of musical genre you can imagine. Damn. Literally till when it got to the top floor was the techno club at the top. It's pretty they're pretty inventive. There's a lot of festivals there. They have a lot of techno festivals, so a lot of things happening there actually.
What do you think it is that makes something like that possible there, where here that seems like a mammoth of a company to try to put together to have a club like that?
I mean, maybe it's because there's like 1.4 billion people there, and you've got
never run out of clients.
There's a lot of people wanting to be entertained. And actually the clubs they didn't cost anything to get in. They were all free.
Right. And then they made
money on the bar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would make me go to clubs more.
You know what I mean? It was like the entrance was free, but you spent your money on the bar. Right, that was a lot of cases. Of course, in the meantime, there's other clubs which do charge as well. You know.
What's the culture like there with drinking when you go out? Is it pretty sober, or is it?
No. It's nothing like.
But is it mostly alcohol, or is there a big drug culture there too?
I wouldn't say there's a big drug culture in China. There is one, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not. You know, everything's a bit more regimented and a bit more delicate, and you know, you don't know really who you can trust, really. I suppose, you know.
It's a bit MFS-esque.
You know what I mean? It's like, you know, someone you think is your mate, you know, might be just an informer for the secret police, and before you know it, you end up in some gulag somewhere. You know, it's a little bit like that, right? You know, and things have changed a lot. You know, with stolen, of course. You know, I don't really have so much to do with them these days. You know, through you know, various things that have happened over the COVID period as well, caused a massive change in the way things happen in China, and I think that you know, the way the political situation is evolving in China is a very delicate situation for them. You know, they never know what's going to happen next. They could get, you know, right now they're playing stadiums and stuff, almost, you know, big events, and you know, if they just say one wrong word, it's over. You know, it's not like here where you can say, you know,
say anything.
No, you can't really say one wrong word either, for that matter. You know.
Yeah, in a different kind of way, I guess. Yeah.
But you know, it's the clubbing thing in China is a very, very different in a sense. It's the same but very different. Yeah, and it's like, you know, when you look at, like, why do people go to clubs? You know, what's the reason? You know, this, like, in China, you have parks where you have little notes on plants saying, "Here's a photograph of my daughter or my son. They're looking for a wife." Right?
Weird.
Yeah. So it's like you have that side of China, but on the other side, you have, you know, clubs where people could find hopefully somebody there. You know? And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
As well, you know, and we were talking before about clubbing itself, you know, like the whole ritual of going clubbing and how it's evolved, you know. When, you know, today in the 21st century, if I say club, everybody knows what it is, and it's an instant recognizable kind of concept. Whereas, like, in the 80s, a club wasn't necessarily it was just a bar, or it was just a place where you just went to a venue. It wasn't really such a discotheque. Right? That a disco was a place where you danced. A club was a place where you just went to get drunk or get drugged. You know, and that's changed over the since the 90s. The concept of what a club has become has changed, and I think that's really kind of interesting, because, you know, when you look at, like, why you know, what the whole ritual of going out clubbing is really something which is also part of our, like, human existence. You know, this dance. You know, I think that the idea that people would dance as a form of entertainment, that's been around since we learned how to sing and to dance and make music. You know, and the whole idea that we could use, like, you know, rhythm to express ourselves in a dancing form, that's been there since primeval man. You know? And it's just now it's all electronic.
True. Massively removed of well, not like, you know what I mean. Technology wise, it's crazy to see that. Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, it's exciting. It's not. It's exciting. I just hope that people will just be daring enough to step outside of the box and just do what they feel, rather than what they think they feel. You know, rather than just, like, conform to the music which is kind of getting the most clicks or the most likes, because you know, that's everyone's influenced by everybody else. You know, I'm not saying you shouldn't be influenced by other people, but it's how you utilize that in some way. You know, I can only do what I do because I you know, that's what I do. You know, to my limitations. But I'm inspired by other people's work, of course. And that's also exciting for me, musically.
Cool. Is there any bands that are particularly inspiring, or artists or whatever, that you've come across recently that you think are doing well?
There are, loads.
Could you name maybe?
No.
Nah. Okay. Well,
I could. I could.
We try to bring them on the podcast.
But hopefully that. No, there are.
Yeah.
Quite a few people that I'm watching, and then I just saw a band just the other day, actually, just a week ago. Großstadt Kid.
Okay.
It's good. Yeah,
nice.
They're really good.
It's a recommendation to run with.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
And they're from Berlin.
Another win.
Berlin Banter. They're good.
Nice. Oh, true. Berlin Banter. Check it out.
There's quite a few, but there's others as well.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of my time is spent looking for what's happening in Berlin, looking for interesting artists and stuff. Yeah,
it's just finding. That's the nice thing though. The search, Yeah, I
love it.
It's that's the best part. It's like buying records.
Yeah.
It's like looking for the records. I don't buy. I'm not a Spotify person really. Yeah. I like to go to record shops and look for records.
Cool. Okay, we've done about 45 minutes. I have a couple of very quick questions, hopefully, before you go. Do you have a favorite bit of kit that you go to for your production?
Not really. I mean, I can work with Cubase, and my partner Ministerium, who we work as a team. It's not just me on my own. Michel's a guy who likes to faff around a lot on things and watch the levels. He kind of looks out for those kind of. As an engineer, he's really very good. Cool. But we interact with each other as well. Because I know that the kind of things that he likes, and he knows that my limitations and stuff. So it's like we interact and work together.
Nice. When doing my research for this, I obviously watched B-Movie. How do you feel the energy has changed in terms of what music is being made in Berlin today versus in the late 70s, early 80s?
Well,
and the intention behind it.
The music at the very beginning of the 80s was all fresh. It was new. It had never been done before. Mm-hmm. And that's the key, really, to it was the fact that it was people were exploring new things. They were exploring new ideas and not letting themselves be hemmed in by some limitation of sort. Like it didn't have to be like that. The punk rock thing which we'd experienced in the UK, you had punk rock bands in Germany too, but you also had things like Einstürzen and Neubauten, and Malaria, who broke all the rules of rock and roll. They didn't give a fuck, and it was about experimentation and expression and how do you feel? Can I put that down into some kind of like audio sound? Whereas today, it's just the thing that's available. Really, it's like it's very
commodified.
Pardon?
Commodified. Yeah.
Well. Everyone is forced to use the same sort of thing, really, in a sense. You either have Logic or you have Cubase, or you have 1,001 plugins or whatever. You might have some hardware, some Behringer 303 clone or something. You might have all these things, but it's like, what are you going to do with it? Yeah. And what do you want? What kind of message do you want to send out there with your music? What are you trying to express? And it's a lot of people seem to just be geared about. How many likes I can get, how many clicks, it's a bit, it's like missing the point, really,
right.
For me. I make music because I like to make music, and I do the best I can with what I can do. I'm not a virtuoso or anything really, and I like it. So if I can convert one person to listen to the music and liking it, then that's great.
Awesome. And last question, what are your favourite places to hear trance music in Berlin these days?
I haven't the faintest fucking idea.
Do you not go out to clubs much anymore?
I do, but I don't go seeking out trance music clubs.
What do you mostly
because
like?
I find that the trance music that's made today is just some kind of like painting by numbers versions of trance which we had before. I'm not knocking it.
Yeah.
You know, you can like that kind of music, but I expected more. I expect more.
What do you look for on a night out if you're going to dance?
A good dark deep bass, really.
Cool.
You know, good bass line, a danceable bass line.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. You know, you have to understand why we go dancing. You know, why do people go dancing?
Mm-hmm.
Why do people go dancing?
For me,
Yeah.
where do I go dancing? I honestly don't go dancing that much. But for me, it's rhythm and.
Yeah, but why do you?
I like some.
Why do you go there? Why?
To just enjoy, and get out of body a little bit.
Because you can only do that in the confines of that space.
In that way, definitely, yeah.
You know?
Or at home in headphones.
But what about if you were on your own in that space?
Same thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter if it was a big room and you were on your own listening to the music. Yeah. You're not. The fact that you're with a lot of other people who are on the same kind of mental plane as you doesn't enter into that at all.
Oh, honestly, for me, I feel like it usually takes away from it. Yeah, but sometimes, yeah, for me, it usually takes away from it.
I can understand exactly where you're coming from, because I think, you know, it's both, really.
Yeah.
You are, you know, like being in a club. It's both things, right? Because I think that it, like the club being in a club which is dark and pounding, and this sound, this rushing sound, that's like being in your mother's womb. It's a safe space.
Yeah.
People feel when they go to a club, they're in a safe space, and they hear this sound, which is completely, you know, like for them it's their this environment reminds them, maybe in their genes, that this is what it used to be like. This is what you know. This is what we've always. This is why techno's probably lasted so long, is because it's where we've always wanted to go, really. You know, and there we are in this dark place with the flashing lights. You're alone in your mother's womb, you know, most of the time. I wasn't. I'm a twin. I have a twin sister. So I find being in a room with a lot of people something which is, I don't know. I mean, for me, that's my safe space, right?
Interesting.
You know, if I'd been alone in the room, maybe I would have a different view on this thing altogether. But you know, that's the whole idea, is that we go to this place because it's like reminds us somehow in our subconsciousness of this safe space we used to be in.
Or the complete other side of dancing, which for me is more a celebration and community, where it's singing and dancing with people. Which is, I mean, that also
comes probably from our primeval roots as well, because, you know, when the man was out hunting for wildebeest or something like that, you know, wild boar or whatever, the women would be at home with the baby, singing to the baby, right? So you have automatically, from a very, very early stage in human evolution, you had the mother, you know, the baby's close to the heart when she's holding it, singing it to it, so she's got the melodic part, and the baby's hearing all the time, right? And it makes it calm and quiet, right? And we have that from very early on in our upbringing, nearly always, and I think that transgresses itself through, you know, into the club.
Awesome. Well, thank you very, very much for coming to talk to us. Is there anything else you want to promote while you're here?
What do I want to promote? Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I've not stopped making music, you know, even, you know, I mean, I might have stopped doing other things, like, but, you know, I'm still making music, and I've just done a couple of remixes for 2 bands. One was called Berlin Banter. They're a band from Berlin, of course. It's called Crystalline.
Cool.
Yeah, it's quite Yeah, you have to listen to their track and then you'll hear my remix. And then I've done another track for a band called the BVs from Augsburg. Yeah,
I feel like I recognize the name.
yeah, they're kind of like an indie band from Augsburg. And I've just done a remix for them.
Cool.
So that'll come out sometime this year.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you very, very much for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you for everyone who's listening. If you can leave a review, that helps us a lot to reach more people. And yeah, thanks to Yannick in the control room as well.
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay. Hope that was all right.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you very much.
Hello.